Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom.
Oh, no, that's even more in front of him. What about behind all that? 'Cause it's got that super intense zoom.
She'll go over there.
Okay, let's do another warm-up.
You're not warm enough? Let's do something else.
they shall come
to
to my holy mountain and rejoice in my house of prayer. My house shall be a house of prayer for all people. My house shall be a house of prayer for all people. And they shall come to my holy mountain and rejoice in my house of prayer. My house shall be a house of prayer for all people. My house shall be a house of prayer for all people. My house shall be a house of prayer for all people.
Well, good Shabbos, everyone. It's still like even being out here in the parking lot. We probably could have been out there. It's not quite as squishy as it was even an hour ago. It was pretty squishy out there an hour ago. It still feels like a miracle even having some of us together like this, doesn't it? Seeing each other's faces, being next to each other. Leslie and Andrew. I was just telling Rabbi Susan, if I never lead another service to a screen again, like... So it's a special Shabbat this week. It's known as Shabbat Chazon, the Shabbat of Vision. And this is the Shabbos that is right before Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is going to begin tomorrow night, and we'll have a commemoration here at CRC inside tomorrow night. But Tisha B'Av is the Jewish day of national mourning, or the National Day of Jewish Mourning, or I'm not exactly sure what order you should put those words in, but it's the day that, like a magnet, has attracted all of the worst things that have happened in Jewish history. It's the day when we commemorate the destruction of the first Jewish Commonwealth. It's the day when we commemorate the destruction of the second Jewish Commonwealth by the Romans. We commemorate the pogroms that happened. We commemorate the, my brain is going, when Christendom went to war with Islam, the Crusades. We commemorate the Crusades, which a lot of folks might not know, but nominally was a war that Christendom waged on Islam, but in fact came through Europe, and it was devastating to the Jewish population wherever we were encountered. And so Tisha B'Av became this day that collected all of these moments. And yet the Shabbos before, the Shabbos that we're on right now, is known as the Shabbos of Vision. And I think this is the most Jewish of ideas, that there is something about these experiences of pain, of degradation, of enslavement, of depravity, these experiences that we talk about and we live through and we own during Tisha B'Av, not as something that happened to our ancestors, but really, right, in the most Jewish of way, we internalize it as something that has happened to us. That this is called the Shabbat of Vision because somehow we can see through that experience to have empathy with those who are experiencing it today. That this becomes the idea, it becomes the central Jewish idea, right? This is what Hillel says when he's asked to tell me all of the Torah while standing on one foot. He says, what's hateful to you, do not do to anyone else. The rest is commentary. This has always been the Jewish idea. The things that are hateful to us obligate us. And so we delve into it on Tisha B'Av. We look at the depravity and the degradation and the depth of the awfulness of Jewish history. And somehow, in the most Jewish of ways, we come through that with a little bit of hope. And so we call on the angels. We call on the angels of Shabbos. Shalom Aleichem. May we be blessed. May we have blessings in our world. May our city have more blessings. May there be more peace. Shalom Aleichem. And we have a page, too. It's not even like a button that I push. Page 6. Page 6. Autumn pushes a button. Thank you, Autumn. Shalom Aleichem. Come to us.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zetechem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shalom Aleichem always ends with Tzetechem L'Shalom, because like any good house guests, we end with asking them gently, politely to leave. There was a... Autumn's giving me the thumbs up that house guests should leave. Is that the...
No, that we can. I want to make sure everybody can hear.
We welcome Shabbos with the words of Lecha Dodi, this mystic poem that imagines Shabbos coming in like a bride, that imagines Shabbat as a wedding of sorts. And it imagines Shabbos as a wedding because what it really means is that Shabbos is a moment of profound transformation, where the moment before is not the same as the moment of. Where, to quote Rabbi Jim, we separate between the holy and the not yet holy. I love how he says that, right? The classic Jewish framing is that which has not yet been redeemed, waiting to be redeemed. But I love how Rabbi Jim says it, between the holy and the not yet holy. And so we move into this space as we welcome Shabbos. Traditionally, the mystics of Tzfat would gather just as the sun was going down in the mountains in the north of Israel. And they would dress all in white to greet Shabbos as this moment. In fact, the author of this poem Lecha Dodi, Shlomo Halevi, made sure that we would never forget his name. So if you look at all of the verses of Lecha Dodi, the first letter of each verse spells out his name, Shlomo Halevi. However, not the version that we do at CRC. We don't do all of the verses, and so I may point out that when you do just the verses that we do, it spells schlub. So I invite us to remember that great schlub of Jewish history, Shlomo Halevi. Let's see, do we have the other verses? No, we just have schlub. Yeah, you'll see it here, schlub, on page 8 with Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi, likrat chala, b'nei Shabbat, Shabbat Lechunecha Kihim Kor Abaraka Merosh Mekedem Nesucha Sof Maseh B'Machshavat Chila Lecha Adoni Mikat Hala B'nei Shabbat Mekabela Itoreri Kiba Orech Uri 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 Shidaperi Kevoda Danaya Layach Nigza Melechadoni Michatala B'nei Shabbat King's Highway, if you look east, it's that way. Well, actually, we don't have doors. What do you do in that situation? Boi v'shalom, ateret bala, tam b'simcha, uvetzola, tochenei, am sekula boitala, boitala, Adoni, Mikratala, B'nei Shabbat
And you can be seated for just a moment if you'd like, though we're going to stand right back up in a second. So if you're feeling, comfortable standing. I got into a discussion this week in a rabbi's Facebook forum that I'm in. You'd be amazed, by the way, how rough and tumble the rabbi's Facebook forums can be. But there was a discussion about land acknowledgments. Are people familiar with land acknowledgments? They become more and more common, particularly at events like weddings, where it begins, you begin the wedding itself with an acknowledgement of the native peoples who were ethnically cleansed from this land. A way of grounding ourselves in this moment and in this place and in the reality of what it means to live on this land and in this place in 2021. And to be a part of that history, that awful history, that sacred history. So there was this long discussion in the rabbi's forum, and I kept thinking during it of Baruch Hu, because I actually think in some ways this is what we do with Baruch Hu. Right? Wherever we have been, we have paused to recognize where it is that we stand right now and to geolocate ourselves back. Right? We all turn towards the same point. We all turn traditionally towards Yerushalayim, towards Jerusalem, with Baruch Hu, and yet by doing so, we all turn towards each other, and we all orient ourselves based on where we are here, where we are in this moment. So I had meant to do the work of really figuring out the sort of land acknowledgement that we should start doing here. I think it's important. I think it's sacred for us to do. So I hope others will join me in this project of figuring this out and of bringing this to our community. So we have this moment of acknowledgement of where we stand, of where we face towards, of the sort of world that we live in, right? Which of course is reinforced with an acknowledgement of the land and the folks who are ethnically cleansed from it. And the sort of world we want to live in, because of course we're told that we don't turn towards Jerusalem, the city as it is. We turn towards Ir Shalom, the city of peace, as it can become, as we can create it. And so I invite all of us, as we'd like to turn towards the east with our prayers, as we call each other to lives of goodness and holiness and justice with the words of Baruch Hu on page 11.
As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. And our blessings give us strength and make our vision clear. And our blessings give us peace and the courage to dare. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed. Baruch Hu et Adonai, HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. As we bless the source of life, so we are blessed.
Whenever you're ready, you may be seated. Mari Varavim on page 12, which Andrew and Leslie will sing in just a moment, is an invitation to radical smallness. It's an invitation to see ourselves and our lives and our troubles as radically unimportant. To imagine the heaviest of things, the illnesses, the famines, the wars, to back away and to imagine them from a cosmic perspective, from what Mari Varavim would call a divine perspective. That when we back away, when we see how small this planet is, when we see how small our lives are, somehow the hope, I believe this with Mari Varavim, somehow the hope is that it lets us exhale just a little easier. I don't know about anyone else. I just finished a really wonderful vacation. You know it's a wonderful vacation when you're really excited to come back too, right? And I've been so excited. And today had a moment of whatever, social media craziness, right? And it's so easy to think of these things as so big. It's so easy to think of these things as being so overwhelming, and to get in those patterns where it just keeps repeating and obsessing. And this is the idea of Mari Varavim, that we can back away, that we can see even the important things as unimportant, and somehow through doing that, see the unimportant things for exactly what they are.
Baruch atah Adonai, Manuel Halom, Hashem bidvaro, Mari Varavim, Mari Varavim
So there's some people who don't like radical smallness. It feels uncomfortable, doesn't it? To feel radically small for too long. This idea of looking out into space, of seeing the stars, of seeing ourselves and our story as being so small. It's the same idea I think we get in the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Kohelet, this idea of radical smallness. And yet our Siddur doesn't stay there. There's an accompaniment, there's another piece of paper, there's something else we have to hold besides just smallness. And that's the idea that in a world where we can see ourselves as infinitesimally small, where do we find meaning? And the answer that our tradition offers is we find meaning in connection. We find meaning in mitzvah, which isn't just connection, right? It's obligation. It's the ways that we are obligated towards each other. It's the ways that we are obligated towards our world, towards the future, towards the past. It's the way we are obligated towards those we know and those we will never know. This is the idea of mitzvah, and this, Judaism tells us, is the antidote, or is the accompaniment to that radical smallness, is this sense of radical responsibility. And so we have this with not with Mariv Aravim, with Ahavat Olam, page 14, we are loved.
We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are embraced by arms that find us, even when we are hidden from ourselves. We are touched by fingers that soothe us, even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us, even when we are too embittered to hear. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved,
There's a translation problem right at the core of our most central prayer. The Shema is maybe the first thing that a lot of Jewish kids learn if they're growing up Jewish to say, right? And amongst the very first things that they learn to translate. And so if you grew up, you may have learned, if you grew up Jewish, you may have learned it as, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is God, the Lord is one." Is that familiar translation to some folks? Yeah. So it's a bad translation. And it's a bad translation from, Zoe's laughing at me, yeah.
She's laughing at me.
Laughing at Leslie, actually, yeah. Is that? It's a bad translation, though. And it's a bad translation that has been translated through cultures and through languages, and it's how we got there. Because, of course, it doesn't say the word Lord anywhere in that Hebrew. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad does not have the word Lord, because that word Adonai is actually a word that we don't say, right? It's the unknowable, unpronounceable word that we have for the mystery that we call the divine, Yud He Vav He. It's this word that tradition has come to translate as Lord, and so we get to this moment where we close our eyes and we say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is God, the Lord is one," and yet that's not what it says. Because the word Yud He Vav He, this word we translate as Lord, actually is an impossible form of the verb is. In Hebrew, it includes pieces of was, pieces of is, and pieces of will be. It's an impossible grammatical form. And so what we end up with is a word that means something like eternal. And so Shema becomes something very different. It's not, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is God, the Lord is one." It's, "Listen, Israel. That which was, is, and will be," is what we mean when we say that word God. That which was, is, and will be in the end is fundamentally one. And so if it is your custom to stand, if it's your custom to rise for Shema, I invite you to do so. Mine is usually to remain seated, so you should totally feel comfortable remaining seated if that's what you'd like as well. You can have mixed families in the same family. It's really totally okay, however we do it. Page 15.
How awesome is creation, with great love we are loved, we are one, we shall love. How awesome is creation, with great love we are loved, we are one, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 How awesome is creation, with great love we are loved, we are one, Echad.
seated.
Danny, I have some chairs in my car. Would anybody who doesn't have a chair or a seat like one? I can go get them. Raise your hand. Nobody wants. Okay. You want one? Go get it.
So we continue on page 16 with words of Via Hafta. I always think of this as the go to synagogue less statement, because Via Hafta is all about how values are only real if they are lived, right? When you rise up and when you lie down and when you are home and when you are away, that our values are how we live. They're not how we say we live. Our values are not what we say they are. Our values are how we treat people in actual life, when we're at home and when we are away.
Did you see Jessica Hentoff last night? Did anybody here see Paul, except for Autumn? Paul Wagman interviewed Jessica Hentoff last night. Jessica Hentoff is our circus lady. And at one point during this conversation, she said to him, when you're trying to repair the world, you use whatever glue you have.
Love that. Love that. So, continue with Micha Mocha. Page 18, our prayer for the repair of this broken world. A reminder of where we have been. A reminder of where we are obligated to go. Page 18.
marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching, we are marching. Ooh, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, we are marching, we are marching. Ooh, we are marching in the light of God. Mi kamoch nida bakodesh, mi kamoch habayim Adonai, mi kamoch nida bakodesh.
Hashkivenu was one of the later additions to the liturgy. There are some scholars who believe it originates actually as something that people would say when they were walking home from shul at night. Because, of course, night has always felt more scary, right? I mean, I don't know about you all. I definitely get more scared at night still. It's not just my children, right? There's something about when the sun goes down that just feels different. So, Tisha B'Av, this holiday, holy day, commemoration, I'm not sure what the right word is, right? It's certainly not a celebration. That begins on Saturday night. It is the darkest, the deepest, the worst moments of Jewish time. And yet there's this idea that in the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, we begin to let up on the morning. It's a day when traditionally you don't fast, when traditionally you don't wear tefillin or prayer shawls, if that's your practice. And yet on the afternoon of Tisha B'Av, it's the only afternoon that this is done. Tefillin and talis are wrapped. And it's done, I think, as a reminder for these moments which can feel so helpless and can feel so hopeless, that there's something magic about Jewish history, right? It has been so awful that somehow looking at Jewish history can make us feel better about our present moment. Right, there is something about it. There is something about looking at it and delving into it and make us recommitted to making the world as it should be, to being that source of light, that moment of hashkivenu, that light in the midst of its absence. Page 20.
Allow us to lie and rise in peace. Shalom. Allow us to lie and rise in peace. Shalom. Baruch atah Adonai haborei Sukkot. Shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael.
So we make the separation away from the warm-up. At some level, everything up to now is warm-up. Even the Shema. It's about locating ourselves. It's about locating ourselves in time. It's about building this moment of Shabbos together. It's about the work of introspection that is at the core of the Shema and its blessings. And so we come to the Amidah, the only part of the service that the rabbis call prayer. And yet the Amidah begins with amongst the most subversive lines in the entirety of the Siddur. It begins, Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha, these words that we translate as, Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. These are words, though, that when you put them in their original context have a very different meaning. There's a terrible story in the Tanakh. There's a terrible story about King David doing something awful and about his child dying, God forbid, because of it. And David looks up, the psalm says, David looks up at God and says, Adonai, sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. God, if you want my prayer right now, you're going to have to do it yourself. Right? What a message, I think, for the rabbis to place this at the beginning of the Amidah. There's, of course, the surface level. God, open up my lips. But when you know the story, and when you come to this moment, when you come to prayer, with that story in mind, I think it changes it, because, of course, we don't come to prayer absent all of our experiences and our traumas and our pains and our joys. And so sometimes the place that we get to is that the only prayer that we can have on our lips is, may I please be able to pray. And so we call each other to prayer. Page 23. Adonai sivatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Whenever you're ready, we invite you spiritually or physically to rise.
Adonai, יגיד תהילתך.
So we invite everyone to take a moment for the words of your heart, the prayers of your heart, the prayers of the page. If you'd like the words of the Amidah, they can be found on pages 24 through 32. And we invite you to be seated whenever you are done.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Ta'asim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Ta'asim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Ta'asim.
Tasim le'olam.
And so we begin to conclude our prayers this evening with the words of Eleno. Elenu's one of the first prayers that the classical reformers 100 years ago started editing. It really bothered them. Because when you look at Eleno, it's a vision of a world where everyone acknowledges that we were right, which may sound like a fun fantasy, right? Because that is, of course, the problem with the world is we're just waiting for everyone to realize that I am right. That's the, right? If only it weren't the fact that everyone else thinks the same thing. And so this is the image of Eleno. And so the classical reformers, they got rid of it. They found it so problematic. The later reformers, they looked at this and they had a different vision of it. They had a vision of what it means if we are all, instead of everyone bowing down towards where we tell them to, if somehow we all bowed towards each other, if somehow we all were able to acknowledge the core and basic, essential, sacred humanity of each of us, that then the world would be Bayom Hahu, then it would be that day that the Eleno talks about. And so there's a key to this understanding that comes from the very beginning of this Eleno. It is upon us to create this world as it is supposed to be. Page 38, we invite you to rise spiritually, physically, as we don't face east. For Eleno, we face towards each other. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latekeru la liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishbechot hadama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vigor aleinu kecho hamonam, vanachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוצר הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים הוא אלוהינו אין עוד Emed Malkeinu Efesulato Kakatu Betorato Veyadata Yom Vahashevota Elevovecha Ki Adonai Hua Elohim Bashamayim Mima'al V'ala Aretz Mitachar Enod V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol ha'aretz v'yom ha'u yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Everyone may be seated. Before we take a moment for Mourner's Kaddish, take a moment for Amisha Berach L'Cholim, for a prayer for healing, for those who are sick, for those who are in need of just a little bit of shalem, just a little bit of wholeness to get from this moment to the next. So if there's someone you're thinking of, whose name you'd like to share, love to hear the names of who we're thinking of, who we're filling our hearts. So for Rick Hack and Gail Rock, Evan Richards and Carrie Schulman, Susan Schroeder and Debbie Zarinsky, Dr. Richard Byrnes, Julie Stevenson, Toby Schreiber, Meredith Berkowitz and Tom Fox, Sherry Hugler O'Donnell, Roshan Batman, Kay Wolpert and Rhonda Banford, Judy Markey and Dr. Powers, Shoko Ganiva, Ann Rudy, Lev Reynolds, Mark Beckendorf, Jeannie Isserman and Linda Reiches, Michelle Long and Martha Messina, Judy Underhill, Stacy Ablis and Alan Snyder, Charlie Moss, Arlene Ehrlich, Steve Littlejohn, Suzanne Cooperman-Gill, Annette Sklar, Karen Teitelbaum, Dennis Judd, Alex McGrath and Linda Holtzman, Betsy Ripner, Lisa Schlesinger, and Victoria Barmarkin, Elizabeth Weinberg and Brandon McFadden, Tabitha Hill and Kelly and Donald Shemwell, Sylvia Ernst, Ann Mays, Gloria Lash. For Jerry and Patty Padower, for Sylvia Ginsberg and Sharon Hollander, Beberlyn Green and Doug Pop. For all of those names and all those people we're thinking of who fill our hearts, the names we're sharing, the names we hold close, and the names we don't even know. Nishaberach Lecholim.
Page 34.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor Abraham Otenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach Imotenu Mekor Abraham Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Rofeh HaCholim. Blessed is the source of holiness that calls us to be the source of healing in this world. And so before we say goodbye to each other for the evening, before we say goodbye to this Kabbalat Shabbat, we take a moment for a Kaddish Yatom, for literally a mourner's, an orphan's Kaddish. We have a prayer, El Malei Rachamim, which is for those who have gone. Really, Kaddish is the prayer of those who are here. Kaddish is the prayer said by mourners in a way so that all of the rest of us, if we don't find ourselves in mourning at this moment, can be aware, just looking around, who it is that we have a sacred obligation to hold and to support. This is the idea of the mourner's Kaddish. These words that don't mention death but affirm life and affirm our sacred connection to it. Words that we require a community to say. We don't say Kaddish by ourselves because there's an obligation when there are those who are in pain that they be surrounded by those who love them. And so if you are saying Kaddish right now, whether it is the year of mourning for someone you've lost, whether it's the yard site, the annual observance of their loss, or whether you're just feeling it particularly heavy right now, we invite you to stand or to put a hand up or whatever it is, and share the names as you feel comfortable. For your brother, a blessed memory.
Sarah Marks' mother. Yeah, Sarah Marks' mother.
For Sarah Marks' mother, thank you. Jill, for your mom, as you walk through this year of mourning, we love you. We're here to walk with you. Helen, for your brother, have a blessed memory. Thank you for sharing a little bit of him with us. so sorry. Thank you for remembering her with us, for your friend Judy. And for Andy. Thank you. For your great Aunt Bernice. Thank you for remembering them.
Malachi Owens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Malachi's funeral was this morning. Malachi was the cantor at Temple Emmanuel for 45 years.
Yeah.
He was an ordained Baptist minister.
My friend Georgia.
So for all these names, we invite folks as we are able to spiritually to physically rise, so we can be shoulder to shoulder with our mourners and let them know they don't walk this path alone. And you can find the words on page 41. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shamei rabah ve'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael v'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei rabah mevorach le'olam u'lomei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudasha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'ami ran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Say shalom b'romav. Booyah, say shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru.
Amen.
Amen.
Oh, say shalom b'romav. Booyah, say shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
May the memories of all of those that we miss, all of those that we mourn for, be a blessing in our lives. And we say, Amen. You may be seated. As we transition to the sacred task of announcements. So a few announcements. First, some just tachlis ones. CRC is not currently accepting donations right now. We will make big announcements when we are accepting donations again in terms of food pantry and clothing pantry. We have a plan. We have a reopening plan. It's coming, but probably not till after the High Holy Days. Tisha B'Av begins tomorrow night, as we've talked about this evening. But we invite anyone who'd like to join us It's a powerful memorial. Has anyone here been to Tisha B'Av here at CRC before? It's done just a little differently. Tisha B'Av is normally the sort of recitation of all of the terrible things that have happened in Jewish history, and we certainly include that. But Rabbi Susan started the tradition of also connecting it with all of the losses that we ourselves have personally experienced as a way of sort of personalizing the national and, I guess, not nationalizing the personal, but something in there. So in particular, we invite anyone who's lost someone in this last year to come. And I think for this year, also, we're going to be mourning so much of what we lost during this more than a year of pandemic. So that'll be tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock inside. So vaccinated folks only. I think that's when it's listed. 7, right, on them? And if Tisha B'Av, the day of Jewish National Mourning isn't depressing enough, next door from 6 to 8, there will be a candlelight vigil for democracy. So you can sort of choose there. Sorry for my gallows democracy humor there. But Zoe liked that one. Yeah. But anyhow, next door, the Unitarian Church, the wonderful folks there are going to be having a candlelight vigil for democracy from 6 to 8. Also tomorrow in the parking lot outside. Let's see, what else? No Shanda, No Shame is on Sunday. Inner Judaism with Rabbi Jim is on Wednesdays. Talmud is back. Story of Us is back. The important things. Ukulele Boot Camp starts a week from Sunday. So if you'd like to learn to play ukulele, this started as a joke with Amy Gage because I said that anyone could learn how to play ukulele in a week. That an hour a day for a week, anyone could play uke. She said, okay, let's do it. And so we did it 3 summers ago, and it was great. And then there's been a core group of us who have met on Zoom every week to uke it up. But those folks have gotten so advanced that people can't join anymore. Really, you should see them. They're pretty good. So we have Ukulele Boot Camp coming a week from Sunday, which is the on-ramp towards your future as a professional ukulele player. No, we'd love for folks to join us. It'll be Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I forget what time, 5 o'clock or something like this. And then that Friday night, we'll have services outside and bring our ukes. I think those are the only announcements. And does anyone else have any? I can't hear you, Helen. I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. The Unhoused Chavura or Circle, or I forget how we're calling it. It has this Thursday, 6:30 on Zoom. Find the link on the website. Has an amazing program with 2 speakers. Thank you. Okay. Let's give each other a blessing, shall we? If you are comfortable putting your arms around the people that you're near, or, socially distanced style, I'll always think of that first. There must have been people. I think, Jill, you were there at that. I call it the first of the pandemic Shabbats, but really it was the last of the in-person Shabbats. And we got together and we thought that the way that we would keep each other safe is we would bump elbows instead of putting our arms around each other. That's how we were going to stop COVID. It worked. If only. So we give each other a blessing. Yivirecha Adonai v'yishmerecha.
May God bless us all and keep us safe.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka.
May you be sure and watch the next time the rabbis get together. It's great.
Do you mean like when Karen and I talk at home? Is this?
The 4 rabbis who this week was only 3. It's brilliant.
Yis Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. And most of all, may there be more peace in our lives. May there be more peace in our city, in our state, which God knows needs it, and in our whole world, because of the things that we recommit to ourselves and to each other. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Amen, 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 amen. Shabbat shalom, 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 Shabbat shalom. Amen, 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 amen. And a big thank you to Autumn and her staff and to James.
Their staff.
Their staff, I don't know them. and Rabbi Danny and Andrew?